I'm not going to do any big introductions of each one of them. Their bios are in LinkedIn and so on. But in any case, thanks Amanda, João, Pedro, and Domingos. And as the first round of question here, I just would like you to introduce your company, your venture, and what makes it different, and what's the value proposition of your business. As a first question, just to introduce each one of you. Probably start with Amanda.
So Jove is an insurtech company providing global flexible insurance for self-employed people and small business owners by providing embedded insurance directly into the like of fintech company, talent marketplaces, and the recruitment companies' platforms.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and hi to the guests on the panel. So Uthere, we provide digital insurance offerings. This means that we were built from scratch, and we actually sit at the intersection between an insurance company, a modern insurance company, let's say, and a digital broker. This means that we are able to offer freedom of choice to our guests, to the users, to the clients that come to us, and at the same time, we're able to allow them to manage their policies, so add or cancel coverages, file a claim, get access to policy documentation, or even canceling the policy. And we make sure to use always a single interaction mode, so a single design mode, regardless of the insurance and regardless of or independently of the insurer or carrier itself.
Thanks, Peter. And you're based in Porto?
No, Lisbon.
Lisbon, and you?
We're in UK and London and Lisbon as well.
Yeah, okay.
Hi. So my name is Domingos. I'm the founder of Habit. And at Habit, we enable companies that usually have a large customer base to embed insurance products either in their offerings, either in their customer journey, and in many cases, actually, helping them make sense out of their business model by creating something that they can actually charge to their customers, because in many of these cases, their core offering is a free product. So yeah, Habit.
Thank you very much. Amanda, when I talked with you a few days ago, you did mention to me that you defined yourself as a flexible insurance validation tool, Jove insurance. And how do you use technology to take care of some of these regulatory requirements? I mentioned the QIC, for instance. How do you do it?
So one of our USP or the product uniqueness is we provide an insurance validation module also for our partners. So for example, as we know that in part of the procurement process, insurance validation is a huge pain from both a regulatory point of view, also from a processing point of view, right? So we're not just talking about the like of the use case of a recruitment company, but also, for example, in construction industry, in a lot of the different vendor management side, the validation of the insurance is one of the compulsory requirement if you can be onboarded for a project. So in the old days, you of course have different processing, you have different paperwork that you have to go through, and the current process, for example, they would need to be able to upload the documents in terms of what insurance certificate you have. It's very manual, and sometimes we even encounter some instances where people change the documents, alteration, PDF alteration is becoming very common practice, right? And it's actually crazy in the market that this type of practice cannot be even detected at the moment. So this is where the technology can really, really make a difference here. So what we did is being able to build a technology, a natural language processing OCR tool, to automate the process of the insurance validation and allowing the organization to be able to set the requirement of the projects and the procurement, and then being able to host the entire documentation, the validation in one place. And that also goes even beyond the initial validation, but it goes to the revalidation, because of when insurance expires, let's just face it, at the moment, no one is validating it. You only validate it when you onboard people, and you don't revalidate that. And this is only something that technology can do. because through the paper processing, it's very lengthy and it's just full of gaps and loopholes in this.
And it's all built by yourselves. You're not using third-party components for that.
No, the OCR system we built ourselves because we actually we did a lot of research in the market. We did a lot of research in third-party OCR as well. And to be honest, majority of them only works very well for like invoicing, standard templates. But in the insurance documents, the insurance certificates, you really have to identify the right language. So we actually use the natural language processing. So build it ourselves. We use OpenAI, of course, as a tool, but the software itself we build ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. João Pedro, as a digital mediator, you need to, I'm sure you are integrated, you work with several insurance companies behind you. How's been your experience in integrating with them?
So it's interesting and mixed journey. We do, just to come back a bit, on the regulation side, we do work closely together with the insurance companies, not only to make sure that we provide best value, but also to make sure that we both comply with internal rules as well as regulatory frameworks. And that's extremely relevant for us. But integration can be a challenge. I think we have a few partners with which we are almost fully integrated on the initial side of it. But as Amanda said, it is a burden after the onboarding process. And we have others that are less so integrated. So we took it upon ourselves to invest a substantial amount of time to learn a lot of the, let's say, caveats and a lot of the rules and offerings that insurers have, so that we are able to offer a seamless, good system and a nice, kind of a nice journey to our insurance agents. I would like to give an example. So we on this topic, we heavily invested in learning what events are actually covered by companies. It's not exactly clear once when one reads the the condições gerais, and there are a few tweaks and turns in terms of the actually handling of the claim. This is something where we invested heavily, and from which we built an internal model that allow us to specifically assess what's best for each customer, depending on the context and depending on the life choices that he or she has. But it's a burden to keep on updating these things. But it's a must-have.
But did you find very different topics of integrating hurdles between different insurance companies?
Yes. So if I simplify things, I would say that younger, let's say less big insurers are more prone to accept newcomers. Big incumbents are less prone to accept incumbents from all sides, from the transparency side, from the IT side, from the relationship side, and even from the development side. Another thing that I think, and I'll go back to Antonio, another thing that I think it's needed to some extent, it's not only the way and the best practices in terms of approaching incumbents and the newcomers, but also how to manage expectations in terms of the development of the life cycle. And that as well, I see differences between bigger and not so big players.
Domingos, in your case, you do provide embedded solutions for big retailers or online retailers. What's your experience in dealing with these guys, and how easy it is to integrate with them and at the same time comply with the regulations?
Sure. So giving some context, so we act on two ends, right? As you were saying, on one end, we need to be fully compliant and connected to supporting the risk, also connecting on with who is providing each individual components of the insurance service, like assistants, the TPAs, all that. So, and this is a connection that needs to be digitally done to each one of these providers. On the other hand, as you were saying, we are enabling these distribution partners to embed the insurance products. And here is where we are actually bridging multiple regulated worlds. Because on one side, we have insurance companies, insurance regulators. On the other side, you have telco regulators, you have bank regulators, you have public transportation regulators. You have all sorts of regulators. And in fact, you end up bridging these two worlds. Our platform, the technology behind, is pretty agnostic on what we are transporting. So the insurance product, we are pretty agnostic of it. And the way that we work is most of the times we have insurance companies delegating powers and responsibilities into our company, into our platform. We act also as a mediator here, and we are also regulated by that. And on the other side, then we expose our APIs on behalf of the insurance company to these partners. So we are kind of this open API to insurance companies, but for the distribution partners, we are actually their connection to the insurance world. We developed this with the insurance regulation in mind, but once we hit the market, we soon realized that this was not only about insurance, this was, as you were saying in the beginning, before the panel, this is also about data privacy, this is about the others regulators. So it has been a journey.
And what type of insurance do you sell, or do you do? It flows from your services. Is it P&C, health insurance, or?
Yeah. So so we work mostly with three types of industries. Now a fourth one, which are banks, telcos, specialized retailers like consumer electronics, and now we are doing the first step with the health facilities and institutions. The products that usually fit these markets are the protection of the devices, the protection of the transactions. So it's mostly these types of specialties or these types of products. So
you not have issues with sensitive data?
We work with now we have the full database of well-known health group in our databases, which count at least 3 million people, some health data. On the telcos end, we get real-time data on the network events that are happening inside the telco. And just to give some context on this data is so relevant because it's what gives us context to start a sales funnel. So it's when the telco is telling our platform in a very anonymous way, but this user just entered in roaming, that we know that that person is flying or just landed in another country, which means that that person could be a target for the sales funnel for travel insurance. Or if a new device is connected to the telco's network, that's when we immediately trigger device protection. So, and this involves, of course, a lot of data that we host, and we need to be compliant with the regulators, plus these large companies which are very exposed also to the risk of sharing data.
Thank you. Back to Amanda. I understand that one of your objectives is to serve clients in different geographies. And what's the pain point in working with different geographies, different regulations? How do you see it?
I think it's a big pain point, full stop, working with a different geography. So on the one side, of course, you have the regulatory differences, right? So the licensing side. So of course, in order to facilitate, but the world is moving into a more remote, global space where people are no longer working with one company in one location locally. They're working with a portfolio of clients globally, right? They also move around a lot, and especially the digital generation, and we work with a lot of them. They might be moving around in one country for 3 months, another country for another 3 months, and so on. And the insurance space typically is in a very specific, for its own a good reason, where the insurer wants to select the right risk appetite that they have in a specific country where they know the claim ratio very, very well, so they will be able to underwrite and price the product very well. However, when it comes to the practicality and the usage and use experience of the product, that create a huge limitation in terms of borderless transactions. So when we're talking about the embedded insurance, for example, whether we are working, so we work a lot with the remote payroll platforms and the talent marketplaces, it does not make any sense for them to just embed the insurance in one location. So if you think about that, that's only maybe 5%, 10% of their population, and that's a big country, even for example, UK or even USA. So the biggest, I think, the pain point is the infrastructure setup in the beginning, in the sense of the licensing requirement. But it's really about identifying the key markets that these platforms are, let's say, covering probably about 80, 90% of the population. And then the second part is being able to identify the journey in each of these locations. And I think this is where technology can really change the market, because of what we do as a technology provider is that we really can identify what are the regulatory requirements from things like GDPR, specific countries' regulation in terms of declaration, for example, IPID, that we need to actually show. KYC process is different according to each countries as well. But as a technology provider or as an insurtech, we only do this once. And we do our job, if we do our job very, very well to identify that, we can make the journey consistent. We can make the journey consistent not only for the users, but also consistent for the insurance company we integrate with. So essentially, we are being able to streamline and automate the process of what the large brokers like Aon and Gallagher is doing in the large, but we can actually do it in an automated way, in a consistent way through technology.
Interesting. João Pedro, also can you share us also some your thoughts about how technology can actually streamline customer journeys and so on, complying with regulations that being with that in mind, always.
Yeah, of course. I think major point is technology is really incredibly supporting, improvement in customer journeys, outdated processes, and in our case, even allowing for personalized advice at scale. Which is not easy if you don't have that. But I would say that there is a lot of things, and in our case, we really needed to review the entire customer journey so that we can actually put forward something much better than not just something better, but much better than we have in the market. But I'll give you a specific example where I think we could actually improve the process or the current process or the process that we have in the market. So we mostly are on the life insurance side of business, and whenever you are quoting for a life insurance, you need to tell your insurance agents and ultimately the carrier, what do you do for a living? Okay, and when you go to insurance companies, you may have a list of predefined, roles or functions or professions that go from 400 to 700 plus, and more than that, even between carriers for similar roles or somewhat similar roles, you might have different names. So imagine how do you choose? You basically don't know, and I think we all have been there, and it's not fun. So one would wonder that traditional agents would be the person to go to, and obviously they are there to help and to guide clients. But once you start to think about it, no real single agent can actually memorize 400 roles, not even add with all the lists from all the carriers that they work with. So what we did, and what we think the way we think that we developed, improved the market, and in this specific point, is that we created an algorithm that allows people to tell how they feel or what they feel about their jobs. Okay, and immediately, in kind of a split of a second, match to the insurance companies where we work with. So you get insurer. Sorry, you get.
Ask a few questions.
I know. I actually allow people to say. So let me give you an example. So you are president of the Insurance Association. Others may find themselves as CEOs, country managers, country heads, or what have you. You might not find this, and you need to look, director or board member or what have you. And I really like, I think I mentioned this previously to you, I really like Freud's phrase where he goes something like, people are basically all the same, and they love to, underline the small differences between persons. Those are the real differences for them, not the big ones. So people do proud themselves and say, I'm CEO or I'm, board member or what have you. So what we do is we allow them to express how they feel, and we at the back end of it we map to the insurance list. Obviously, this is something that we need to continuously update. But what I can tell you is that two things. From one side, customers feel in control, point one. Point two, insurers get better and proper underwriting data. This is one thing. Second thing, from our experience, up to 40% of the cases, situations where the way people express themselves does not directly match to what insurance have pre-designed. Exactly. So at the end of the day, in the split of a second, we could actually have saved, some emotional hardships and times through the process. Yeah. And it's a win-win approach. That's basically, I think, the approach that we went by.
They get also data with higher quality in the
exactly, and that's super relevant.
Yes.
And if you imagine that's relevant for life, but that would be relevant for workman's compensation and and if you even go to other parts of the whole process. Let's talk about medical questionnaires that are a second kind of a level of ordeal.
Domingos, I'd like to go through the how you developed your solutions. I understand it's all developed in house, it's proprietary. But did you use? How did you go through the testing of it? Did you do? How did you do a pilot? Was it with an insurance company? You use one of these regulator sandbox that also have in Portugal to guarantee that you are compliant? What was the process?
Yeah, so our first deploy was with an insurance company. It was with the Allianz group, so outside of Portugal. And actually we came back to the domestic market, and we did a small challenge to the regulator asking, does this fit the market? So, but in any case, we develop with the mindset of we need to create an open API that could be very agnostic of the insurance company. It needs to fit most of the markets, needs to fit most of the regulation spaces, and needs to carry most of the insurance products. This was the major mindset. On top of that, we discovered that, like I was saying before, that there are multiple regulators involved in distribution, and we needed to do these small challengings to the domestic regulators, which we found out that they enjoy. They like to see new things. They like to analyze. I just think they also have little bandwidth to do it. But this is how the market also evolves, is when you go a little beyond what's written and go beyond the line that was marked. Always very careful, always looking at sensitive data, properly at sensitive data, and always considering that ourselves, we are, like you said in your presentation, we are also the regulatory framework for our distribution partners. So, and with this in mind, we have actually today a platform that not only transports the subscription of insurance product from the sales moment to the insurance company, but also we are the wallet where the customer can manage that same product. But at the same time, and I would see this as one of our most important features and advantages, is for the distribution partner, they see us as a regulatory box. They know that if they work with us, and we are today working with very large telcos, very large banks, they look at us knowing that if they work with us, we are granting them and guaranteeing that they are inside the regulation and the regulatory lines. Just one additional note is that when we are supplying these products to our distribution partners, they also see on us, additionally to this regulatory component, they also see a huge a very fast go-to-market, which is very important because no one wants to spend huge IT effort on integrating with different insurance companies. Like you were saying, it's a challenge. There are insurance companies that are very prone to it, others that have a lot of technology and you need to comply with it. Others want to do it, don't know how to do it. Others don't want to do it, just want to stick how it was done before. But what's also important is when you have this kind of open API that translates the same API into any kind of insurance product, then you are their gateway for products. So to answer your question, we developed a product with these kind of macro guidelines in mind, and this is where we ended up.
Thank you. Amanda, and what's your experience in integrating with all these different insurance companies with different levels of maturity in terms of digital world and new technologies?
I think it's a very wide, different experience. So we work together with some, not to name any insurers, but there are some insurers who's extremely digital and who's got the right API from every single level, from quoting to declaration to purchase, and all of this can be, you pick and choose whichever based on your model. So that's fantastic. We also have other insurers who's literally just sending us a spreadsheet. Say, okay, we don't have anything, but then this also comes into the challenge of saying the trust, right? Because we also know the pricing and the price, the structuring the pricing is the most important valuable IP they have. And then it's coming to a question of you can build the API for us, but are we actually comfortable to give you our pricing as well? So it really varies. I think that the InsurTech, the multiple API that the distribution channel is really opening a huge market, and it's really up to the insurers whether they are dedicated their resource to build this API or say, hey, okay, maybe not so much, but then we need to be able to work with very selected partner within the InsurTech that we can put our trust into the team than being able to build this API for us.
One question also that I think it will be interesting to know is how do you manage all the regulatory changes? How do you keep a track of it? Do you have a team following them, or do you have a compliance officer looking what's going on outside in the outside world?
Yeah, so that's a large pool of things to tackle. But one of the things that we do, as I mentioned initially, is to really work close together with our insurance partners. So that way we can really, in both ways, comply with internal rules, but also comply with regulatory changes. As you said, I think for me, more than just the regulatory challenges, and we don't often speak about it. We speak about the IT legacy. It's the cultural legacy, and that's to a certain point. I think that's one of the big things that we need to continue tackling.
We also rely a lot on the insurance partners, even when we're working with. As you know, today there are reinsurance companies that provide you local capacity, but they are seen as a reinsurer. They are basically say, manage the product, we provide you capacity, distribute the product. Even those ones are heavily supportive of the regulation, how you are handling regulation. So more than having a local office or a legal office to support you, the insurance companies are actually doing a great job there.
Thank you. Maybe I'll open up for the audience. Any questions, any comments to what we've been discussing here?
Thank you. Yeah, just one question. I'm in scene from the point of view of the insurers. I guess you three would all be, I mean, from their point of view, you would be their outsourced business in a way. You know, they're your examples of outsourcing business, which they have to talk to the regulators about, because they have to file that you guys are outsourcing. Is that something? Do you see that as a burden or as a problem, or?
I suppose that it depends on the business model. So for us, that because we are in insurance intermediary, so ultimately, essentially, it's I think on the outsourcing, it's not so much of the outsourcing, but more of the distribution model. So it's the same as MGA or an insurance broker. I think the onerous of the process is really being able to identify what's the difference between the digital process versus the traditional broker process. The traditional broker process is very understood by the market, right? By the insurance company as well as the regulator, of course. So you don't need to necessarily explain what you are doing there because of it's quite standard. And you also have different system, very established system that provide to the brokers where all of the pricing is already on there. I think when it comes to the new world digital process, it's really being able to identify what are the advantage, what are the distribution channel and the product USP that you as an insurance company can actually obtain, but then being able to also identify the regulatory side in terms of, for example, KYC, what are the data points that you can obtain, and even more data points, for example, than the traditional broker model. So for example, what we do with the integration of the platforms are, rather than just taking, if you are doing a question set, typically you only have a limited amount of the question set. Otherwise you will lose customer. While through the embedded module, what we can actually identify what are the other data points that could be interesting. So I think it's being able to mimic the same regulatory process as the traditional broker in terms of the declaration, in terms of the contract signing, IPID, and the binding agreement and so on. But then being able to do even above that, being able to actually getting more data points, which the insurance company can actually use for the future analysis of the claim ratio correlation. That's probably the most interesting part. And this is the part, I think, even from a regulatory point of view, they would like to see the insurance companies actually taking an active step towards that too.
Adding to what you said, and I fully agree. So we are on the private side of the line of business. So in that sense, a lot of the mass markets where companies are absolutely comfortable where they are, across channels, as you said. Where I see a challenge is on the concerns that they now have around data protection and cyber. That is something where I think newcomers and insurers might work well together, because they also don't have any standards on how to go about it. Whilst with other regulation that is much more stable, and they feel much more comfortable with it. More so because they rely heavily on traditional distribution channels where they are completely comfortable on a lot of those topics.
Yeah, I would agree with everyone. There's actually some cooperation between both models, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but there's actually some cooperation between these two worlds. And like you were saying, like on the cyberspace, ourselves, our team, when working directly with the insurance companies, although we are not supplying them with any type of service or outsourcing, we are actually identifying them cybersecurity problems, huge database leaks, which we immediately, of course, work with them to mitigate the problem. So at the end of the day, things end up working pretty well. In terms of acting as an outsourcing service for the insurance company, we like to see ourselves as a MGA, where there's a very clear figure and of an insurance company on one end, that delegates us some responsibility, some powers as well, and we need to do our mission, which is place the insurance product at the best time in the right place to the right customer. This is our mission.
Thank you. Any other question or comment?
Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering regarding InBev, the insurance. So for the ones doing InBev, it's a big value proposition for the affinity for the partners selling, because they increase average return per user. So why don't we see more oftenly this type of journeys? That's question number one. And you mentioned, so we are speaking a lot about distribution, but you also mentioned product creation. So if you could control the product stack, like what you would do differently from the insurance companies? And then a view, if you want to comment, I'll be super happy to learn.
I can start. This is just our view, but why we don't see it more? Because it's actually very hard. Although it's mimicking what exists today, you are pushing the boundaries on not only on the regulatory aspects of the insurance company that is allowing distribution in different methods, but then you are also evangelizing and making sure that your partners understand the value of putting insurance products into their core offer. Some of them are changing their business model, which is a huge change in a company, creating a business model not out of their core product, but out of an insurance product. And the third one is that all these entities are actually regulated. The second question that you made about creating new insurance products, that's actually a very important topic to us, because most of these partners are actually entities that need very customized insurance products, in our case, which means that for them, we need to be like this box composed with the little blocks, where by composing the little blocks, they are actually building an insurance product. Of course, then at the look and perspective of the regulator, it's not a very customized insurance product. It's actually 2 or 3 or 4 insurance products that are joined in the same sales journey. But at the end of the day, this is how we are working, and customizing insurance products is a very, very important topic for us. And we would love to see more ways to do it, not only on the risk perspective, insurance companies willing to do that, but also on the regulatory, how the regulation would allow this to take place.
Thank you. Any other comment for this?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that you just said. I think in terms of why there are not many embedded tackle insurance, it's a quite difficult, it's a high barrier to entry, I think, from especially regulatory point of view. And when you are talking about the embedded insurance, also a lot of these platforms, like we mentioned, is global platform. So in order to really deliver the value, you're not just talking about one geography. And in order to actually have this infrastructure, it takes a long time and investment to actually even get there in the first place. And then it's really the knowledge of the team being able to identify where is the exact point of sale as well. Because of you can talk about embedded insurance, but it's really about the conversion and where do you sell into these platforms and how does it embed it. Because of the traditional affinity model, you can actually say, depends on how you define it, right? The traditional affinity model ultimately is the beginning of the embedded insurance. So you just have a link. But the conversion is very, very poor, typically from the traditional infinity. And I think the knowledge, being able to understand what type of customer onboarding process they have and designing this in the right way so that they can distribute to at the right point, this is a very challenging point. So you need to have a knowledge of both and then the regulatory side.
Just add one more thing to what you said, which I fully agree. But if you actually look at banks, although from a regulatory point of view, they are an agent, they are a broker, it's embedded insurance. So it's basically you tie a product to whatever funnel and process you have. I think we have 2 other additional challenges. I think one is, whilst we only have one word, which is embedded insurance, there are loads of different types of embedded insurance, as you say. So it's kind of a sac de gâche. I don't know how to tell it in English. And the second challenge that I would see is that, whilst, as Amanda said, it's a question of conversion initially, insurance products do have the after-sales, management. And there we haven't solved the issue how to, link the platform or what have you to the service and the claim side that one needs to go through.
One other aspect would be the infrastructure to support embedded insurance, which is, for example, we partner with some large, well-known brokers, which have platforms for embedded insurance. If you look, they also advertise their large, very very prettified version of a platform for embedded insurance. But when they look to European markets, individual European markets like Portugal or even Spain, they see we do not have a business case that supports the deployment of our infrastructure. So for Portugal, for these brokers in particular, business opportunities that have or represent a portfolio of less than $10 million are not worth to deploy their infrastructure. So that's also where we come into. That is a very agile way to deploy the product. So it's actually very hard for everyone to do this.
Thank you. To close now, just a quick remark by each one of you in 1 minute. What I'll start with Amanda. In 1 minute, just what message you want this audience to take from this panel?
I think it's a really exciting time at the moment within the digital space to be able to use the technology not to only making the distribution more efficient, providing more sales value and also value add for the like of the marketplace, fintech, and so on, so that they understand the value of the insurance better as well. Ultimately, that's actually creating more sales, right? Yes. For insurance company and understanding of how important the product is. But at the same time, even for the customers or for the partners, is providing the peace of mind for their customer and their users, as we all know that in the industry, for example, the insurance validation of Uber and so on. And I mean, even the marketplaces are becoming more and more increasingly aware that providing peace of mind and the security is so important when coming into the longevity of their business and even the competitiveness of the business. So, and InsurTech is very, very well placed to provide both the efficiency of the distribution as well as that doing things consistently to satisfy the regulation. So it's a very, very exciting time.
Thank you.
So I would completely agree and sign on with what you said. I would just add two things. One is, I think what Antonio mentioned and what Fintech House is doing is really, really important, because if we want to champion but actually make a steady move forward, we do really need to, from all parties, from regulators, incumbents, brokers, and other parts of the value chains to work together and actually find a way to improve integration, but as well to improve the cultural side of it. A second message, I would say in a completely different tone. We often champion, again, as you said, the message of the InsurTech, but my message would be buy insurance. We often don't buy it, and we need to feel protected, so buy insurance.
Thank you. Domingos.
I'll tag along to the buy insurance, but I would say that one important note as well for us is that InsurTech and the digital space does not mean end-to-end digital. So you have our friends at WeFox, where they are actually enabling traditional insurance. So they are enabling it with digital solutions, with insurance products, but InsurTech and insurance and the digital space in insurance is actually just pushing the boundaries on how were things done before and how can we add additional value to the end customer and to the chain.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Amanda, João Pedro, Domingos. Thank you all.